I think people in this town are very set in their ways.
This is it. This is the end for them.
Actual fascists potentially could get in.
Thousands of people that support reform, and none of them are Welsh.
We need some change in this country, and we keep voting Labour. We keep getting Conservative governments. It hasn't worked for us 50 years, I can assure you, so maybe do something differently.
We're in Wales, Cardiff to be precise, the capital of Wales. It's distinctive from England, it's a whole different country, although it's part of the UK, but there are, dare I say, points of commonality, things we share, one of which is terrible trains. Big delays to come to beautiful Cardiff. And on my way up, I saw that there had been a train track in Iran, one of many, which had been bombed. They'd already fixed it in just a couple of days. I wonder how long it would take Network Rail to rebuild tracks in this country if they were blown up. So why are we here? It's because something big is about to happen, of course. In May, you will see elections across much of the UK, but here in Wales, the Senedd is up for grabs. Now that body, since its inception a few decades ago, has seen Labour dominate. Wales as a country really has been a one-party state for a century. It's the last holdout of all those Labour heartlands. People said Labour could never lose Scotland. It did.
How does the Scottish Labour Party ever come back from this?
I do not know the answer to that question.
People said that Labour could never lose the Red Wall. It did in 2019. But throughout all of it, the party kept Wales. That appears to be over. We'll know, of course, in those elections in May, but right now the bookmakers have Plaid Cymru as the favourites to finish first and Reform to finish second. In other words, social democracy, straight-laced, pro-Britain, centre-left politics is being replaced on the one hand by Welsh nationalism and on the other by a party led by a gentleman who presents a TV show on GB News, likes a beer, and he's more Tory than the Tories. Something clearly is changing, and we're here to make sense of it.
If you don't live in Wales, this actually really matters to you because this is your ghost of Christmas future, okay? This is what could happen in England at the next general election. So, what do we have in Wales? We have a really unpopular Labour government that are incumbent, which have had a mantra of change, stick with us, we're going to turn the corner. And on either side, you've got, in Wales, you've got Plaid Cymru, a little bit of Greens, and Reform on the other side. What do we have in England? We have a really unpopular incumbent Labour government, but on one side you have the Greens, and on the other side you have Reform. The debates that take place in here are a microcosm of what is going to happen in the wider UK. And actually, it's not just a kind of premonition of what's going to happen, it's also the training ground, the honing ground, where these parties are gathering data and resources and experience in order to go at that general election. And I think whatever happens here and how people react after the election will really, really matter.
So we're in a part of Cardiff just over the river called Grangetown, and the houses here are gorgeous. These are late 19th century, bit of Gothic revival, bit of arts and crafts. I should also add that in Grangetown, the Green Party have a council. They won their first council here quite recently, and they're the hidden variable in these elections in May, because even if it's Plaid and Reform going for that 1-2, even if Labour are going to fall to third, the Greens could come fourth, maybe higher, we don't know. But what makes all this really interesting is a new voting system, which could see the Greens benefit from the anti-Reform vote and the demise of Labour too. To help me make sense of all of this, because of course we're talking about a country besides Cardiff, Wales, we're off to see Novara's very own Dan Evans, a central figure in the Novara media cinematic universe, our Sherpa for all things Wales.
How are you feeling about these elections in May, which include obviously the Senedd here in Cardiff?
Nervous but excited. I think it's on a bit of a knife edge. I think it could either go to Reform or Plaid, that's what the polls are suggesting. I really hope it's a Plaid victory. I honestly never thought that we'd see the end of Labour hegemony in Wales. There have been so many false dawns. I've sort of been waking up on election morning, like sort of Christmas morning, thinking Labour are going to be gone, but it's never happened. But I think this is it. This is the end for them.
Are HMOs on the rise as well in
yeah.
in Cardiff?
Oh, there's loads, mate. Loads. Well, yeah, a lot of them are actually owned by Labour councillors, which is, which is like, you know, you look at there's an ongoing joke. If you see an HMO, they'll have a Labour placard in it because the landlord.
I'm used to doing like 40 minutes with Andrew Neil with no breaks, no editing. So this is not that, is it? So
Wales has been a one-party state for 100 years, and yet that's just fallen off a cliff. What explains that flip?
I think having Keir Starmer in Westminster elected on the basis of a change platform and then people not feeling any change after he won, coupled with a feeling of Labour in Wales have been in power a long time. There have been a number of scandals with the previous First Minister, for example. And so I think it's a perfect storm, really, for Labour.
So what's good about it? Because somebody might be watching this and they're sympathetic to you politically. They might love your book, and they say, well, hold on, reform are a real variable in Wales, so why are you so happy about the collapse of Labour? Because however bad Keir Starmer is and Welsh Labour are, they're better than Nigel Farage.
The chances are it'll probably be a Plaid-led, you know, if we do get a good outcome, it'll probably be a Plaid-led government propped up by Labour and the Greens, which is in itself obviously deeply problematic because we've had Labour-Plaid coalitions for years. But yeah, I obviously don't want reform to win. It could go that way, which would be an absolute disaster. And in that scenario, then obviously yes, it would be better to have probably the status quo. The reason I want Labour to lose is because they've become the establishment in Wales. It's as simple as that. They are stale. They run out of ideas. And anyone who's had any dealings with them locally or in Wales knows that they're not a particularly ideological party. But when a party becomes like an establishment, you attract apolitical, essentially grifters. And, you know, credit to Mark Drakeford, he provided Welsh Labour with a veneer of, you know, intellectual heft.
And you think you turn up here this afternoon and claim some sort of moral high ground? What sort of world do you belong in?
They had a coherent brand, which was sort of soft nationalist, mildly social democratic, and but since Drakeford's stepped down, and since, you know, firstly Vaughan Gething interregnum, which was an absolute disaster, now Leonard Morgan, Labour have collapsed. People who are left, unfortunately, are the real dregs.
But one of the first things Labour did when they got into power was U-turn on personal independent payments. We know that Wales has an older and sicker population, which is more damaging here, and this is a country that's voted for you time and time again. Like, what a betrayal. And I think it was that accumulative betrayal that people are picking up on the doors over a number of things.
People don't like them. You can see them on the street. People slam the doors in their faces over Palestine. They have lost some of their really, really loyal core voters. They're losing the sweet old female social worker, you know, type that used to be their loyal foot soldiers. When even those people are gone, you know it's over. And I'd be very surprised if they retain power.
That coffee roastery there,
yeah,
that looks quite like bougie. That could be in like fucking LA or something.
Oh yeah, it's very, very bougie.
Perfect.
See, this is a bit of Bastani, isn't it? By the way, I don't. He's demanded that we go here.
To go from a one-party state to losing all of that is a really big deal. So where are those kinds of voters going now?
They'll go to either Plaid or the Greens as the new progressive alternative.
So in England, the Greens have this amazing story, right? Exploding membership, by-election wins. What's going on in Wales?
We're seeing a similar growth, massive surge in membership, past 8,000 now, more than trebled in the last few months, and it's just going up. And what's really exciting is a lot of them, the vast majority of them, are young people. Well, it's a mixture of young people and ex-Labour people, angry Labour people, who, if we weren't here, would just not have a political home anymore.
This is a proportional system, and Plaid Cymru are not going to get 50% of the votes under this system. To stop reform, we need to have a strong group of Greens in the Senedd as well, pushing Plaid Cymru to actually go further, because we know, because of them being a nationalist party, they're not necessarily going to deliver on everything that they say they will.
So what's the best case scenario after May?
The best case scenario for me is a Plaid-led government, which will hopefully be supported by Labour and the Greens. I think it'll be difficult for Plaid. They'll have a hostile government in Westminster, which isn't going to hopefully, well, isn't likely to give them much money or support. There's also another, I think, quite feasible, difficult scenario whereby Reform become, the main opposition. That would be the best case scenario for Reform. I don't really think they want to win. If they're the opposition, if, for example, they win the popular vote, but Plaid, Labour and the Greens come together in a coalition in order to form a government and keep Reform out, then Reform can say, look, the establishment have stitched us up and they've stopped us coming in. So it fuels this narrative that they're sort of political outsiders. They then will stuff the Senedd with all their sort of people, largely from England. They'll use it as like a proving ground or a training ground for candidates. They'll get a lot more money, and they'll just kick up a massive stink. They'll use it to really try to derail everything Plaid want to do, to push culture war bullshit, I would say.
I've said it a number of times on the doorstep to people. We're in an election right now where actual fascists potentially could get in.
When you say that fascism's on the ballot, who do you mean?
I think it's very clear. I mean, Reform. I mean, there's some of the things you see some of the candidates saying are very in step with the ideology of fascism. You would see a candidate in Bridgend in the Vale do a Nazi salute, right, as a starting point. Something I think we really need to be better at in having these conversations with voters in Wales is around actually some of those ideas that people like Farage have. You speak to many people in the valleys, the ghost of Thatcher is still there.
So we're off to Merthyr Tydfil. What can we expect?
Absolutely love Merthyr. Well, you'll see. You'll see. It's brilliant. Here we are. So coming into Merthyr now. Yeah, you'll start to hear like some male voice choirs singing. You'll start to see some husks of the old coal mines.
These communities were actually built on the Labour Party, the working class movement. You look back at our history with the coal industry. We were, in our heyday, the powerhouse of the world. The wealth was extracted from our communities. The death knell probably was the miners' strike of 84, 85. And since then, our communities have suffered. I mean, the IFS came out last week, didn't it? And it said Wales has now yet again got the highest child poverty rates in the whole of the United Kingdom. We've had a Senedd now for over a quarter of a century, yet we've still got over 30% of children in our communities, and it's higher in these communities. In Penrhyn Khyber over in Cynon Valley, child poverty is at 45%.
Wow.
It was the highest, it still is, in the whole of the United Kingdom. And that's despite having a Senedd, which was led by Labour, and in coalition with Plaid on at least one occasion. So where do people go? On the one hand, you've got Plaid Cymru. On the other, you've got Reform, a racist party embedded in the political establishment, which is capitalising on people's sense of disillusionment and detachment.
They opened a shop up here, and the guy who owns it is a Reform chap. So he arranged or allowed or whatever Farage to have a rally up here. And I went because I was curious, let's go. So I parked up and I walked down through the car park, through the cars and then through the crowd. And there wasn't a Welsh voice. There just wasn't not a Welsh accent anywhere. I don't mean talking Welsh. I mean not even a Welsh accent. They just imported a load of people into Merthyr to make it look as though there was hundreds of thousands of people that support Reform. And none of them were Welsh. So the second time he came, it was the last general election. And he kicked off his campaign in the Gurness Club. Now the Gurness is a massive social housing estate. There's a lot of poverty there. He came down by a helicopter and landed in the next valley over so that nobody knew he'd come by helicopter, and then got in a car and drove over to the Gurness Club and got out of the car as if he'd, I've driven all the way down and he'd come in an helicopter. This isn't what people in Merthyr travel by.
So Mark, you edit the fanzine for Merthyr Tydfil.
Yep.
Darlem for Merthyr.
Yep.
I love it. In terms of the punters that come here to watch the home matches, who do you think they're likely to vote for come May?
Look, if you speak to all my friends, the group of the Dial M for Merthyr group, you probably get a lot of Plaid Cymru voters there. But you still have the traditional Labour supporters here. They still are here. It's entrenched in the valley's psyche, really, that Labour vote. So you still have that. But again, there is, you can hear in the bars, people talking about reform.
On what issues though? Because people will say migration, but obviously with the Senedd they can't do anything about that.
Yeah, but I think with migration though is such a look. Not everybody is politically savvy. Let's be honest. We all, and social media is such a massive thing. People want change. I get that because the Senedd is a great thing for ourselves. This football club, the funding of this stand behind me, came from sort of within the Senedd, within the local authority. It came to us through those avenues. So they're really important to us. But at the same time, people want change because we've had Labour here for 120 years, and there's still nothing's changed a lot.
Can I just ask who you're planning to vote for in May?
Voting for Plaid actually this time. I've been a Labour voter for many a year now. I know there's a lot of rhetoric about time for a change, etc., etc. I think I'm with that as well. I don't think reform are the answer, far from it at all. And I think Labour haven't covered themselves in glory. Whether that be on a Wales basis or national standard, to be honest with you. So it's Plaid for me this time.
So why not Farage? He's a popular man in this part of the world. Ish.
Well, let's be honest. He only cares about England, doesn't he? What's he going to do for Wales?
In terms of reform and their breakthrough with people in these valleys, this part of the world, they talk about reopening the pits. Is that?
Fuck up. Reopen the pits. Open the pits.
So they're laughing.
Millions of fucking litres of water down there. Do you know grabbing more?
I'd get away with that.
50 years pumping.
Can I quickly ask you about Farage?
He's appealing to a base which are just read clickbait and just read the headlines and don't actually analyse what he's talking about. Because, as you said, they want to open the pits. It's just not feasible. And the stuff he wants to do just doesn't affect the valleys at all. Stop the boats. Just don't see there's no migrants in Merthyr. Very few. And to be honest, the ones that are here, fantastic. Bring more. They make the community nice. Got nice restaurants, Chinese restaurants, Turkish restaurants, barbers. Stuff that, the community needs. People come here, work hard.
Why do you think he appeals to people here then? Or some people, even if it's a minority?
No idea. Yeah, probably they just got disengaged with politics and don't really understand what, really can be done. Anyone going on the telly and say they're going to make your life better, but, when you analyse what they're going to try and do, it's a joke. So, there we are.
They play good football here, don't they?
Of course we do.
I haven't watched non-league for a long time.
Every single one of us here today is putting £1,500 into a train station that's going into the Midlands. This HS2 is just a joke. It's got nothing to do with Wales whatsoever. We're not getting any money back to invest in our infrastructure here. The only infrastructure we've got here now, the new road that's gone across the top of the Heads Valley, Europe paid for.
And I built it.
He built it, and Europe paid for it.
Is he too much of an English nationalist, do you think, to ultimately break through in Wales long term? Is he too much of an Englishman?
He's too much of an Englishman, but the stuff he spouts is very colonialism, and that doesn't sit well with people of Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. Just like we've had enough of colonialism. We're the victims of it. Hence, we're the language we're speaking today.
You're looking at Plaid, are you, in May?
Oh, 100%. 100%. We need.
Stay with him.
We need some change in this country, and we keep voting Labour, we keep getting Conservative governments. I know we got a Labour one at the moment, but it hasn't worked for us for 50 years. I can assure you. So maybe do something differently.
I think people in this town are very set in their ways, sadly, but hopefully a change can come.
Everybody said they won't change. That's what's really interesting. So Labour obviously in trouble. but Plaid, Welsh nationalism and reform, some would say English nationalism, or just on the right, they're very different options. Which way do you think Merthyr's going?
I think reform will have a chance around here. Certainly a lot of people I know sort of lean that way. And I'd say myself, I'm definitely more towards that than Plaid. I'm not a nationalist in any form. I'm very much a believer in the United Kingdom as one.
What are the policies of reform? So, for instance, they talk about opening the pits, and then the guys over there were laughing. If you were to vote for reform, what are the things that attract you to them, policies-wise?
I suppose the sort of illegal immigration. I know that's a very touchy subject, but I just believe that we're not a big nation in terms of the United Kingdom, and Wales even more so. So I don't see how we can just let any person into the country. I feel there should be more steps in place, but I'll happily admit I'm not the most educated person on that subject.
It's hard to predict which party is going to get in. For me, I'm hoping reform, because it's time for a complete overhaul. It needs change, it needs a new ambition, not the same thing that's continued for the past 20 odd to 30 years. It would be nice to see someone else, because I think everything's completely gone wrong.
Such as?
Well, some of the decisions, look at a 20-mile-an-hour limit from Labour, and that's one you can look at. How the way the COVID pandemic was handled here with the medieval laws, it just proves that we need a complete overhaul and change. The way, a more modern approach, if that makes sense. When you're looking at immigration levels, we need a more controlled system than what we have now, and I think that can be delivered.
Would you like to see the Senedd scrapped? Because that's something that the more hardcore elements of reform or their voters talk about.
Yeah. I think after the next election, I wouldn't say yet, but if we look in 5 to 10 years and nothing's changed, I think the Senedd being scrapped could be an option.
It's on borrowed time, basically.
Yeah, it needs to prove itself the next 5 to 10 years, otherwise you are better off scrapping it.
This must be one of the best views of any football car park I've ever been to, for sure. It's gorgeous, although the weather is touch and go. I thought I'd say something quickly at half-time, just an observation, having spoken to some people here. And that is the way that people are talking about those they disagree with. So Mark, the tall chap who writes the fanzine, who edits the fanzine here at Merthyr, was very inclusive and kind when he spoke about the people that he disagreed with. He said they're fans of this club just like I am. They're no different. We just happen to disagree about politics. And I thought that was quite revealing. Equally, when I was speaking to the young guys who are planning to vote for reform, they were quite calm and moderate in how they did that. And the reason for that, I think, is because there's a community here. That word that politicians love to use in making sense of things. Community, the community won't have it. They love speaking on behalf of communities. But there is actually a real community here in Merthyr and in the valleys more widely. And what that means is people can have disagreements. You can have changes of political views, etc. And it's done in a much more calm, reflective way. Certainly a less deranged, insane way than what you see with online politics. Very, very different. Now, that doesn't mean that everything's hunky-dory and people aren't, aggy with one another. I'm sure they are. Do people violently disagree with each other in the valleys? Of course. Like anywhere. But it does make you hopeful for how people can do politics in the future when these offline, connected communities still very much exist. And I have to say that's not the case for much of the country. That's certainly not the case for much of England. Here in the valleys in Wales, it most certainly is alive, and I think that's something to be positive about. When people can disagree but still have respect for one another and still say, well, you know what, we're part of something bigger, in this case Merthyr Tydfil Football Club and Merthyr Tydfil, the town, I think that's
That's something that's really good. So, can I just ask, who are you planning to vote for in the May elections?
I will be voting Labour on the basis that of my socialist principles and the really truly excellent calibre of the candidates who are standing in Merthyr Tydfil, Pontypridd and Aberdare constituency.
Yes, I'll also be voting Labour because we actually had one of the candidates call into our home. He made an appointment, he called to see us, and he's the only candidate on the whole list who has been to see us and speak to us personally.
So we were just speaking to two young boys, I say young boys, they're probably in their early 20s, and they're tempted by voting for reform. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me. It worries me, but it doesn't really surprise me, to be honest. I think, Merthyr Tydfil was a poor town, reformer throwing out an agenda that, people, I don't think they understand the implications of actually voting for reform. I don't think people understand that they won't look after our public services. This is a town, the demographics in South Wales, we've got high levels of poverty, high levels of illness and sickness, and we rely probably more than other towns on really robust public services, and I don't think Reform are remotely interested in providing public services. I just don't think they care about people.
Those people over there who are tempted by Reform, and other people as well who I've spoken to, they kind of acknowledge a lot of that, and they say, but you know what, we need a clean sweep. It's been 25 plus years, we need a change. Many people are saying we need a change, it's going to be Greens or Plaid, or they're still sticking with Labour, but they happen to be thinking, well, actually Reform is a really big change. What's your answer to them? Because on the one hand you're saying, well, we need that stuff, but it's more of the same, right? And that's what they don't want to do.
I don't know, I would say, obviously I'm in my 60s now, I would say be careful what you wish for.
Well, you've given, you've got to take it here.
On Tuesday the 4th here, we'll travel to Marine.
How real is the possibility of Reform coming first?
They're a populist party. I understand all of that. I understand the fact that, Labour has been in control of the Senedd for 27 years and people are weary and people want change. And as a party, what we've got to show is actually, in these really troubling times that we're in, what we need actually is stability and progression, building on that stability. And I think that's what we can offer. But I do understand the appeal for change. What I would say, however, is you don't have to scratch the surface of reform very, very deeply to see that there's very little substance there. And the other thing I would say is in communities like this that would never in a million years, because of the destruction of these communities by the Tories, would never vote Tory. And yet here we are in Merthyr Tydfil, and we see the Reform list of candidates. Their number one candidate on that list is a former Tory. Their leader in Wales is a former Tory. On every Reform list across Wales, we're seeing rafts of former Tories. It is Tories that were responsible for the decimation of these communities through the coal mines, closing the coal mines, the steel industry. The decimation of our manufacturing base is what did for these communities. And these people are now putting themselves forward apparently as the solution to all the problems. They were the cause of the problems.
So polling can always be wrong.
Yeah.
Your postal ballots may outperform expectations. Who knows? We never know. But if the polling is correct, then it's going to be applied Reform 1-2, most likely that 1-2. How does that make you feel?
If that's how it turns out, I will be devastated for my community, because it will not be the best thing for my community. I absolutely know that. I know that in my heart, and I know that because I've lived it. I've been a socialist all my life. I've been a Labour politician here in Merthyr Tydfil for the last 10 years, and to see all of that swept away on a whim and on a fantasy and on a very shallow offer from other parties, I think would be devastating. I would be devastated personally, but I would be devastated for this community.
Merthyr. What a place. What history. The first locomotive train in 1804. The first time the red flag is raised by workers as a symbol of revolt. 1831, Merthyr Uprising. Think about that for a moment. The flag that became the basis of the flag of the USSR, the flag that became the base of the flags of places like China and Vietnam in the 21st century, their flag's based on a flag that was raised in a Welsh town of, 70,000 people. And that is the history of Merthyr, but what's the future? Labour has been the #1 party in Wales every single general election since 1922. Labour has been the largest party in the Welsh Senedd since the start. And if you want to understand why Labour has had such support in Wales, you just need to look at that history, right? How is it possible that a country produces riots, technological revolutions, and eventually radical cabinet ministers that start things like child benefit, like Jim Griffiths, or the NHS in the case of Nye Bevan? One country produced all of that. Why? Because you have this relationship between, as Marx talks about it, the technology, the mode of production, the relations of production, and the culture, and the norms, and the conventions, and the daily habits. So Labour's dominance in Wales was the outgrowth of that country being at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution. And Labour's collapse, which is what's happening in Wales, is a delayed response to that legacy also passing away. What's replacing Labour in Wales is the big question. The media is going to jump on Reform coming second, if they come second. So the big story, of course, is Plaid potentially forming a government of some kind at the Senedd, but Reform finishing second, beating Labour in the country of Nye Bevan, Cerys Matthews, Manic Street Preachers, is immense. Wales in 2026 offers a glimpse of the future, I think. It is the prequel to the next general election, whether that's in 2028 or 2029. A collapse of the two-party system, maybe, let's just be honest, the three-party system. The modus operandi of the Labour Party since the 80s has been to administer the status quo. We'll manage stuff marginally differently and marginally better than the Tories. With the economy, that's not good enough when your economic model isn't producing growth. And with the constitutional setup we have in this country, that's not good enough when Britain isn't working. It isn't working. And I think that's where the biggest problem for Welsh Labour is. I think the crisis of the union is a crisis of the two-party system. The Tories and Labour were an adaptation to the post-World War British state, and both parties were and are committed to globalisation and neoliberalism. On all three of those counts, the globalisation model, neoliberal governance, and the British Constitution, they are weak. And in seeking to defend it, they can't really win much consent. Is Welsh Labour over? Possibly. But is the culture that underpins Labourism in Wales, trade unions, socialism, social democracy, is that dead as well? Absolutely not. So the passing of one and the persistence of another opens up all kinds of possibilities. I think the same will be true for the UK after the next general election.